Whenever I run into Mark in the lounge during a free period and he gives me that one hand motion, I know exactly what to do. He gets out some music and we go ahead to the practice rooms and figure out chord progressions for songs on the piano. Yeah, you wish you did that. Mark is one of the most hardworking guys I know. He does it all. This year he was in the musical and the one acts and he was varsity swim captain. He takes several APs, plays piano, runs, and is reputed as one of the most intense thinkers in our BC Calc class. Seriously, it makes me jealous. Despite Mr. Enos's insisting that there is no I in calculus, Mark will try to incorporate that imaginary number into everything, and he frequently succeeds. Anything, any method of solving something that is so outside the box that no one would ever dare consider doing it has been dubbed the Herzog method. He is so knowledgeable and passionate about the lesser-known math, sometimes when he explains things to me, it goes way over my head. We've done a variety of things together, including, but certainly not limited to, watching Inception multiple times to develop the latest theories on whether it was all a dream or not, and discussing the role of phi in math. And Mark is genuinely a nice guy who listens to everything you have to say and is always there for you if you need any advice, and I am happy to call him one of my best friends.
So I've written draft upon draft of this intro, and none of them really captured what it is about Mark Herzog that makes him a great guy. There are just so many little things that I could talk about, but none of them would really do him justice alone. So I figured I'd just list a few of those little things. First off, he's probably one of the only people who does the optional physics homework and does it well. I mean, I did a few assignments, but I didn't actually do them as best as I could. Herzog does all the physics homework, and he does it really well, because he's genuinely interested in the subject matter. So one of the things I admire most about him is how sincerely he pursues his work. Secondly, freshman year in English, we read Romeo and Juliet. I know none of you have, but we did. In Romeo and Juliet, there's a character named Friar Lawrence. Mr. Willis had the class act out parts of the book from time to time, and Mark always ended up playing Friar Lawrence. This wouldn't be memorable at all, except for one time when we were acting it out, Mark had a 4-page soliloquy to read, and midway through the 3rd page, I'd say, his voice cracked. This was not just a minor voice crack. This was probably the worst voice crack in the history of voice cracks. It was really bad. Sorry, Herzog. Like, it might have measured on the Richter scale. But from then on, being one of the immature freshmen that we were, I called him Friar Zog of the voice crack for like a year. And he was kind of okay with it. He was kind of a great sport about the whole thing, and I still even call him Friar Zog to this day. So one of the other things I admire about Mark is that he's able to find humor in even himself and look back on things and laugh, which makes him awesome to be around. Then lastly, last year, for a number of reasons, I didn't plan on going to prom. Mark, however, didn't want me to miss out and spent a lot of undue energy trying to convince me to ask someone and go. He even went so far as to get me into a limo. I eventually did end up going, in part due to Mark's advice, and it was a great experience. So Mark's always offered me sage advice and looked out for me. He's one of the nicest people and best friends I've ever known. Up until yesterday, I was able to say that I wasn't going to miss Mark at all next year because we were going to the same college. Unfortunately, he changed his plans on me. Now he's going to college 500 miles away, so I'm actually going to miss him a lot. But I'm sure we'll stay in touch and remain friends because Mark's one of the most genuinely good people I know. So please
stand
to
greet
our
friend
Mark
Herzog.
Thank you. Please be seated. As a child, I was always forced to write thank you notes after holidays. I despised it. There was no way that I, 8-year-old Mark Herzog, would sit still for 15 minutes to write a thank you card. I would much rather argue with my parents as to why in the world I was doing this. And so I would procrastinate. 15 minutes became 30, 30 became 60. I felt I was imprisoned, held against my will, forced to write thank you cards until the day I die. I don't know why I wasted so much time over it. I mean, it was only a greeting, 4 short sentences, and then a goodbye. Dear blank, thank you for the blank you gave me for insert holiday. I'm grateful for it. This is what I did with it. I would always get hung up on the 4th sentence because I didn't know what else more to say. I eventually learned that I miss you was a great filler sentence, followed by from Mark. During my childhood, these cards were the bane of my existence. They just seemed so useless. It's not like I was receiving tons and tons of thank you cards. Why should I have to write them when it seemed like no one else was? Little did I know, it would take me many years to realize their significance. I'll begin in my freshman year. For Halloween, I decided to shave my head bald for my costume. This caught a lot of people off guard because it was a little early for the EA Have It for Day hairstyle rituals. I was getting tons of attention, and I'm not going to lie, I loved it. People would randomly come up to me just to feel my head and saying it felt like a basketball. And I think Adam DeSalvo put it best when he told me, "Dude, I just want to dribble you." Still, rumors quickly spread around school as to why this little freshman had lost all his hair. I was walking back from chapel when someone asked me, "Did you get cancer or something?" Now, this was about the 5th time someone had asked me, so instead of just saying no, I said, "Yeah, sure, I have cancer, whatever." Well, someone must have overheard and not realized I was being sarcastic because my false answer was blown way out of proportion. Finally, someone confronted me about it. Sean Mack walked up to me and asked, "Yo, dude, is it true you have a disease or something?" I quickly corrected him. "What, me? No, I don't have a disease. I'm not the type to get sick." I had no idea what would happen in the coming months. Fast forward a year. I was being drugs to help manage Crohn's disease. It's a disease in which your body's immune system attacks its intestines. But, to tell the truth, the drugs are worse than the disease itself. It caused me to wake up every 2 hours, pain in my chest, mood swings, and I overall just didn't feel like myself. It was as if I was watching someone else live my life for me. Not to mention the worst side effect, bloating, especially on my face. It made me look like I had gained over 100 pounds. I was the teenage equivalent of the Michelin Man. I couldn't bear to look in a mirror. I joke about it now, but the reality is I did not handle this well. I was an emotional wreck, and a stubborn one at that. For some reason, I had decided that I would handle this on my own. I did not want anybody to help me. I didn't want sympathy. I still don't. I just wanted things to be normal. I just thought if I acted like things were normal, then that's what it would become. But things weren't normal. I became reclusive, sometimes barely talking at all. And while I could sometimes pretend as though things hadn't changed, my appearance showed that they had. Just like when I shaved my head, I was getting attention, but not for the reasons I wanted to. People would come up to me and ask, "Herzog, are you okay?" And here's when I made one of my biggest mistakes. I lied. I got my wisdom teeth removed, which was partially true, but it had happened weeks ago, and it wasn't the reason I was so bloated. I lied to nearly everyone, teachers, classmates, even some of my best friends. I continued this lie for over 2 months. Please, if any of you ever have a big problem and someone reaches out to you, tell the truth. It will make things tremendously better. Also, lies have a way of getting out of control. And that's exactly what happened with mine. People started to wonder why I was still bloated if my wisdom teeth were taken out months ago. I slowly began to let people know what I was going through, but it would have been a whole lot easier if I didn't lie in the first place. The drugs were supposed to make me better. They weren't. The disease was getting out of control. It got so bad that I was admitted to the hospital. While I was there, I wasn't allowed to eat for the first week. When you aren't allowed to eat, you begin to notice how often food is involved in everyday life. I could look out my window and see at least 10 restaurants. People would walk in and out of my room with food. I could smell the pizzas and pastries coming from outside. I even found another thing to hate in addition to thank you cards. Subway's $5 footlong commercials. I swore if I saw one more of those commercials, I might just have to break the TV. I had to get used to the doctors and nurses very quickly. They would constantly come into my room and ask me a bunch of questions, and then proceed to feel my stomach and ask, "Does this hurt? What about this? How does this feel?" Just a quick interjection. Who has ever gone to a pizza restaurant and gotten dough to play with? Basically, that was my stomach. They would mold it and knead it around like dough. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't help but feel slightly violated. I just said it felt fine. Meanwhile, back at school, word must have gotten out pretty quickly that I was in the hospital. I never could have foreseen the amount of concern and sympathy that came from all of you, and I'll never be able to say thank you enough. I received cards, phone calls, texts, and my personal favorite, a get well card made out of scented markers. I am extremely grateful for everything I received from this community. After getting out of the hospital, I quickly realized that I had a long way to go to recover. For example, I couldn't even run upstairs. The first time I tried, I tripped and fell on my face. I was weak. I started to get very angry at everything. Why was this happening to me? Hadn't I been through enough? How could I ever recover from all this? It all seemed impossible. I did somehow recover from this feeling of despair and started to work towards regaining the life I once had. I still had one goal: get back to normal, the way I used to be. I could write a whole other chapel speech detailing this, but long story short, after a grueling summer and fall, I had reached my goal. In fact, I had surpassed my goal. I felt better than before because I had realized something about myself. I always used to stay in my comfort zone, not trying anything too crazy or out of the ordinary. But after my recovery, I realized, why was I ever holding back? I mean, life is much more fun when you just try new things. I got more ambitious. I got more involved in school and scholium, mock trial, even the play. Why sit on the sidelines of life when you can get up, start dancing, and have one hell of a time? But the reality is my recovery made me realize how great things can be if you just are adventurous and put effort into your endeavors. While I can't say my disease was the best thing that's ever happened to me, I can definitely say it has changed me for the better. When I tell people I have Crohn's disease, I normally get this, "I'm sorry, look," and they say something like, "That must be tough." But they don't understand. I'm not held back by this disease. I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I'm fine now. I don't have any issues with it. My life is not controlled by it. I'm lucky because my disease has opened doors for me. Doors I didn't think existed. I look at people in a different way, too. I now realize that everyone has their own battles. Mine was my disease. This brings me to another reason why I was lucky. While I was on the medication, it was clear I was going through some rough times because of my physical appearance. For others, this may not be the case. That is why I'm asking you to offer your help to others when they may be in need, because who knows what they may be going through at that moment. Many of you may think that this is just a chapel speech. It's more of a verbal thank you note, but this time I present it willingly. Dear Episcopal Academy, thank you for your support during my time of struggle. I'm truly grateful for all of those who reached out to me when I needed it most. With your support, I was able to bounce back stronger than ever. I will truly miss you all next year when I go to college, but I won't forget how you helped me. Sincerely, Mark Herzog.